to have got this opportunity to participate in your orientation program. I just congratulate you for spending time for the students during the course of their academic career itself, even before they graduated, to familiarize themselves with the civil service examination and its details. So, as you rightly put it in your welcome address, civil service today in India and especially in Kerala provides a very good opportunity for promising youngsters who want to serve their country, want to serve the community, serve the people around them, to live better, to do better, to come up better in their lives. Plenty of opportunities are provided by this unique service. The Kerala, as you know, is a state where agriculture, industry, everything is in doldrums. Nothing has progressed. With the result, new private investments are not coming up much. So, in the absence of new private ventures coming up, the opportunities for youngsters within Kerala are very limited. So, even the little opportunities available in the government service here, we are hearing about the Pinvadil Niyamanam, at entries through the back door, entries for the people who die in harness, things like that. Open competition, the scope for open competition entrance is very limited in Kerala. Unfortunately, that is the situation in the state. But at the same time, fortunately, UPSC, Union Public Service Commission, which recruits the officers to the higher levels of civil service in the country, even now is free from political interference, I understand. Even today, a fair amount of fair practices are being followed. So even today, people without any backing, without any recommendation, without any other pulls or pressures, are able to come into the civil service on their own merits. So here is an opportunity which the youngsters in Kerala should grab. They should not lose this opportunity. But to get the opportunity, as you know, we are all very intelligent youngsters in Kerala. We have got very intelligent people. But intelligence alone will not really produce results. You have to work hard. More than that, you have to understand how the examiners are looking at the exams, how they are evaluating your answers. So understand the technique of responding to the questions in a proper fashion, so that you ultimately convert your knowledge, convert your intelligence into marks. And that way, our organization gives you some orientation, gives you some help. Other Mr. Abraham Gurian will explain the details during his talk. Now, before I conclude, I must tell you about the institution as such, the Xavier Institute of Management and Entrepreneurship. This was begun about 25 years ago by Professor J. Philip, who retired from his innings as the director of IIM Bangalore. Perhaps you know IIM's, Indian Institutes of Management. They are there in various places in the country. But the most prominent of them are in Ahmedabad and Bangalore. So Professor Philip had the good fortune to take up that institution as its director when it was in trouble. And during his 6-year term, he managed to bring it around, make it a viable, progressive organization, attracting the best talent. So after this period, he wanted to set up his own unit with the help of a few other like-minded people. And it has come up well during the last 25 years. Now he set it up originally in Bangalore, and second campus was set up in Kochi 7 years ago, and a third campus in Chennai 4 years ago. Now all these three campuses are producing students who are MBA students, that is PGD, postgraduate diploma in management, the same as MBA. So they get jobs there. Now last 2 years ago, I mean more than a year ago, this institution decided to help the students in Kerala, the youngsters in Kerala, to become trained as promising civil service aspirants. So that way this Xavier Leadership Center and its civil service training program was inaugurated. Unfortunately, our students who took the first year training, they were able to take the entrance exam only yesterday. Till then, because of COVID, the whole thing was getting postponed. So generally, the you are asking, when you are speaking about an institution training students for civil service, they'll say, how many of your people have managed to come out successful? How many of them have got ranks? And you find in the newspapers, people, full page advertisements are being released. So many people got ranks who trained, who got themselves trained in those institutes. So we have just begun. So we are not able to indicate anything like that because even our first batch took up the entrance exam only yesterday. They should have taken a few months ago, but unfortunately, COVID prevented them from taking the exam. The dates of the exams were postponed, changed by the UPSC. So anyway, we are having a devoted team with the director, Mr. Abraham Gurian, and experienced faculty who are, some of them are people who have been trying civil service entry also. By making attempts for 2 or 3 occasions, they have become very familiar with the drill. They have become very familiar with the type of questions which come up and the answers which are required. So these youngsters are the type, they form the bulk of our faculty, these youngsters, out of their practical experience in tackling these exams. And some of the seniors also are there, though the exam pattern and syllabus were slightly different during our time. Some of us also are familiar with the type of exam patterns, etc., changing. And Professor Abraham Gurian has been looking into this. He has been, during the last 7 or 8 years, he has been actively involving himself in civil service training in various other institutions also. So with all this rich background, I think we will be able to provide a good opportunity for you too. I have unfortunately got to go and attend a meeting. I have taken an extracurricular activity in the sense that I am the head of the Aam Aadmi Party. The Aam Aadmi Party, you know, the party which is pleading for transparent governance and which has been doing extremely well in the small state of Delhi, the national capital region of Delhi, as they call it. So in Kerala, we were dormant for a few years. We are trying to stage a comeback. We are trying to pick up the threads from where we left it off 2 or 3 years ago. And I am also taking up, I have to attend a meeting there. So I may have to leave after some time. Now I request Professor Abraham Gurian to come up and enlighten the students with more details. I am sure, if possible, I will get back before your thing is over. Let me see. If that is over, I will try to participate in the question and answer sessions. So I can assure you one thing, that UPSC is a place where still transparent policies prevail. Still people can get in without any recommendation and things like that. And there is reservation for the scheduled caste, scheduled tribe, as well as for the economically, as well as for the backward community, and a small percentage for the economically backward people among the forward communities also. So all this gives you, all this allows you to work hard and hope to get something in. And the civil service, IAS, IPS are not the only thing. There are many other services. In all, about 1,000 people are getting selected for this class 1 positions themselves. And so many other class 2, various other openings also are available. So once you try to do something, a very remunerative career, as well as an honest opportunity to serve the people. If you want to amass money, this is not the place. Amassing money is not our cup of tea. In fact, people like that will not be able to serve this countrymen, serve the fellow people properly. So if you are willing to follow transparent policies, willing to manage your resources within reasonable limits, and the salary levels are not too bad now, they are very good, they are sufficient incentive. At the same time, the greatest incentive is you get a chance to wipe the tears from some eyes at least. People who come to you, you will be able to solve their problems, relieve them of their grief and unhappiness. And that is the greatest richness we can get in this world. So I wish you all the best. I hope these orientation programs will lead you to the training courses here, as well as to the entry into the civil services, maybe next year, maybe year after next. Wish you all the best. Thank you very much, Principal Dr. Professor Rajiv, and other friends. Thank you for the opportunity. Wish you all the best. Thank you. Thank you, Rendra. Now, perhaps Mr. Abraham Viren can take charge. Rendra?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, I think
Thank
I
you.
will not wait for any formal introduction.
Okay.
Sarek sir and principal, distinguished faculty members, and my dear students. Since Sarek sir has given a detailed background of the general setup in relation to UPSC and relation to the competition, I will not go into those details once again. I'll confine myself mainly to the way in which you can prepare for the examination. In the light of what has just taken place, Sarek sir has already mentioned that the first batch of students in Excelsi appeared in the prelims exam just a couple of days ago of 2021 exam. And based on the question paper that has been released and also on the manner of training that we have been following, I'll try to summarize the findings in a few minutes. I think I will take about half an hour if the time permits, or maybe more if you like, depending on the question that you may like to ask and all that. First, I'll try to clarify a couple of things. Number one is the general feeling that it's an extremely difficult examination where lakhs of people appear and the chances are rather limited. So that is true, it's a difficult examination, and then the number of candidates also is quite large. But that does not mean that a hardworking student of average intelligence who has done his graduation cannot cope with the syllabus. It is not really true. The second impression that the results also have probably brought to your mind is very many who have qualified have been able to do so after the third attempt, fourth attempt, and all that. That also might give rise to an impression that it is very difficult to get across even after doing your graduation or post-graduation even. But this again is a wrong impression. Rather, it's a correct fact. But the reason behind it, I think I would like to explain in a minute. You see, the experience of most of these candidates would be that they start preparing for the examination after they have completed their graduation or post-graduation. By that time, it is rather too late to cope with the syllabus, because it is at your stage, the students who are in the first year graduation, which your college has been able to identify correctly as the age at which preparation has to start in a meaningful way. Otherwise, by the time you complete your graduation and probably even post-graduation, the focus will be comparatively lost. It's not that you cannot do it, but it will be more difficult. You see, the advantage of starting now is that you are in a position to combine your graduation studies in two ways. Number one, in selecting a main subject of your liking. For instance, if you are in science or if you are in humanities, which among the subjects that are being offered you would like to pursue for post-graduation. The same subject, what is part of your natural aptitude for a subject, you can identify during the course of the next 2 or 3 years, number one. Number two, this also gives you sufficient leisure to attend an evening program or to read the newspaper regularly, so that your preparation would be almost 20-30% ahead of others by the time you complete your graduation, and the remaining part you can take it up for a dedicated 1 year or 2 years, depending upon your aptitude and ability to complete and then clear in the first attempt itself. I do not wish to speak much personally about myself, but I would like to mention, because it's a matter which is of some interest to you, that along with me, two of my siblings, my brother and sister, myself, all the three of us qualified in the civil service. I'm in the IPS, brother is in the IFS, and the sister is in the IRS. We all qualified at the first attempt, and we never attended any coaching. Of course, we belong to the old generation. Why we were able to do it? Because we were in the habit of reading right from our school days. We had an atmosphere of reading. That is what helped us in comfort. So the same thing applies to every one of you. I too come from a rural background, and then I had also limited opportunities, but that didn't stand in the way of my preparing, because of the fact that I was fond of reading and I pursued it. So with this very limited introduction to that, I'd like to touch upon the subjects and the preparation. You see, the examination which took place the day before yesterday, which is called the preliminary examination. I am sure you all of you would be familiar with the scheme. There is a preliminary examination qualifying which you are allowed to enter if you qualify and attain the cutoff marks which are high. You are allowed to enter the next stage of the mains examination. And once you are able to qualify there, you are required to appear before an interview board. That is a board I was a member for 3 years, interviewing candidates. So the preliminary examination that took place day before yesterday is, is constituted or comprises a group of subjects. It is not one subject or two subjects. If you look at the group of subjects, you will realize how you need to prepare. I'll just mention to you the number of groups as well as the way they are combined together and the number of questions that are definite. This is based on the examination that took place just a couple of days ago. That is the latest. The pattern will keep changing, but generally speaking, this is how a preliminary examination is designed. I'll also touch upon the mains examination once I do this. You see, for instance, the most important, or rather the maximum number of questions, I will put it that way, that came up in the examination that took place day before yesterday. The maximum number of questions that came up in the prelims exam is in group 1. I will call it a group 1, where history of India and its culture and heritage and history of national movement, freedom struggle, that constituted the first group, and where 21 questions came out of 100 questions. So it's a total is 100 questions. 21 of them came in this first group. The second group is called, it's the term which I am using. It's a group comprising 3 or 4 again subjects. Number 1 is Indian polity. We call it polity because it involves the Constitution of India, its governance, its various aspects of administration, and also international relations. This is also part of that. That particular group accounted for 19 questions. So history 21, constitution we'll say shortly in 19. And the third group, which I'll again call something to do with science, where environment, ecology, biodiversity, climate change, and general science, basic general science. This brought up 15 questions out of 100. So that again, you can see how it is gaining importance nowadays. And the next group is of Indian and world geography. Even though in the examination, of course, it might be clubbed with other subjects, that is different. But for your understanding, Indian and world geography is one group, or one particular section, which attracted 14 questions, 1-4. Then comes an important component, again, almost more or less similar. It is India in economics and social justice. Economics, as Suresh sir also mentioned, and you have a postgraduate department there in your college. So you will be familiar with the fact that, Indian economy is passing through a difficult time now. And we are still in the process of repairing some damage that had happened because of COVID. And even prior to that, there has been some decline. So these issues are of it's a matter of forming economic policy of the country. So in the UPSC examination, even though you may hear about economics and social justice and growth and development, these are there. But in the UPSC examination and the prelims exam, as also in the mains exam, the questions are basically those relating to the economic policy rather than hardcore economic theory. So you don't need to have a BA economics degree or something in order to do it. Any branch, as you would have been seeing in the papers, doctors, engineers, statisticians, mathematics, physics, all kinds of students appear and then they are able to clear the exam. So the economics part that is mentioned here, even for that matter, for the geography part, you don't need to be a specialist. All that is required is your ability to understand things what are happening around you, taking place around you, and able to analyze them and to present your viewpoint. Then comes the general science part, which is only basic biology, chemistry, physics, which you do not even up to the 12th standard, I think 10th standard. But here again, I would like to mention that the science part that came up in this particular exam paper for yesterday, as also it comes annually every year, it is based more on the developments that are taking place in science, whether it's in relation to production of vaccine, new systems, or genetic engineering, the way you can produce vaccines, or maybe in relation to the damage that is caused to the environment. All those are in relation to things which are taking place around you every day. So the general science, again, you don't need to be a specially qualified person. You can attempt it successfully if you are able to go through papers carefully. So then, of course, this year it was a surprise inclusion about 2 or 3 questions on sports, international sports, which has not been happening for the last 20 years or so. Suddenly, the UPSC has introduced this. This is also a matter for your understanding in relation to important events that are taking place. I would to test your awareness, how exactly you would like to deal with how you are aware of the developments and what India can do, or what our state can do for that matter, in relation to promotion of sports and other things, which are also part of your personality development. So I would say that these constituted the 100 questions. These elements constituted the 100 questions that came up for the prelims exam a day before yesterday. Of course, the mains exam is different. I'll just like to mention it in 1 minute. In the main examination, the same group again recurs. The same group comes up. Same number of subjects you have to continue. There are 2 additions to this. Number 1 is there is a paper on ethics. Ethics is morality. That is a principled behavior in life and in work, whether it's in public service or in private life. So ethics and morality is one paper, full-fledged paper, which was not there in my time, but which has been introduced recently. That is one additional subject which you have to do. And a completely different pattern of examination. In the prelims, it's MCQ. You can, multiple choice questions are there. You only need to take the right answer. 100 questions. It requires your awareness, and you can just take the answer. But in the mains examination, you have to write short essays. In fact, earlier it used to be long essays, but nowadays the UPSC has cut it down to essays of duration, or short duration of, say, 7, which you can do in 6 to 7 minutes, 150 words in some questions. In other questions, they need answers of 250 words. So it's not difficult at all. But the range of subjects is the same. The wide range of subjects which I described earlier, they remain the same, with the difference that in each of these subjects, there will be questions which require answers of 150 words and 250 words, which you have to complete in about 8 to 7 to 10 minutes, because 3 hours and these 20 questions would be there of this duration. So roughly speaking, 7 to 8 minutes, where you have to introduce, in the space of that 150 words, you have to introduce a subject, you have to present the content, and you have to draw conclusions based on your view of that particular matter. I don't wish to go into that because it will take time, but I'll confine myself only to giving you some idea of the questions that came up in the prelims exam and how we prepare students for the prelims exam. Every institute does that, and how students are prepared for the mains exam also. The practice is different because in the prelims, you only need to answer in a word or just take the answer. In the mains exam, you have to keep practice writing of answers within that particular limit of words and in the limitation of time. So that needs continuous practice of answer writing, which you can start doing even now. When you have the question papers are all on website, you can start doing that even from day 1 if you like. But then it requires a lot of reading, it requires a lot of practice, it requires a lot of continuous application of your mind, so that you are able to present a viewpoint. What is your view about this? For instance, any controversy that is taking place today, because I belong to the UP cadre. You heard Sarek sir also mentioning that. I retired from UP, but I just like to mention that incident which took place in a place called Lakhimpur Kheri, where unfortunately 9 people died as a result of confrontation that took place between farmers and the police. A lot of politics is involved. I don't wish to go into that. But you suppose an essay is asked about the farmers' agitation. You will have your views, but you should be able to justify your views. For that, you need to know something about the farm laws. The 3 laws which were passed by the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha become law but it has been kept in suspension by the Supreme Court for some time, keeping in view the very large-scale agitation that is going on. So if a question comes up as to what view you hold about the farm laws, is it favorable to the farmers or it's something which goes against their interest? What exactly would be the right kind of law that is useful for India today, farm law? Because we are, 76% of our people depend on farm and agriculture for their living. So we need to really understand all the implications of the farm laws, just as an example. So that alone will give you a background to say whether this ongoing agitation is justified or not. And if it is justified, what should the government do about it? If it is not justified, what alternatives there can be for farming to improve? Because all of us know, because we all come from agricultural families, that we know that agriculture is going through a very difficult time. Farmers are in difficulties all over the country. Because in Punjab, Haryana and all, because the government buys food directly from food grain directly from them, they're able to get what we call the minimum support price. But in Kerala and other places, we don't have any support. Of course, for coconut and all, I believe there is some such support. So these are issues on which you need to have a viewpoint of your own. But before you can make up your mind, or you can project a point of view in your short essay of 150 words, you need to be very clear about the facts. Then only you can argue. What are the facts? What is the cost, and what is the cost of production of food grain? What is your market value, and what will happen if the laws come into being? So that sort of a thing is required to be done at the mains level when you come to the mains examination. So I'll now go across to tell you how you prepare for this particular prelims and mains examination together. You can't prepare separately for the two. The both have to go together. First, I'll like to mention how you start preparing for the prelims exam in the manner of saying that where you don't have to write in detail, but you need to have the same familiarity, same command, I would say, same knowledge about facts. You see, number one requirement at your stage, for instance, you are all students in the first year, I'm told. So in your case, you have got 3 years of study, 2 years of study maybe remaining to complete graduation. So the most profitable way, the most meaningful way in which you can approach this preparation is to depend mainly on your newspaper reading. In fact, I mentioned my personal case saying that all of us could clear the exam in the first attempt, because in those days newspapers were not very many, nor were they easily available. But we had the radio, and we used to depend much on the radio and its discussion for gathering knowledge, as also analyzing and understanding issues. What are the complexities involved in some of the problems that we were facing in those days? So whether you are attending today, nowadays, everything is on your fingertip. You have got the entire resources at your disposal of the Google or internet at your disposal. And you also have got other sources like the TV is there. Number of websites are available. All knowledge is available at the click of your mouse. So your opportunities of learning are far more. But even with all the resources, I would still say the newspaper even today remains a staple, a very dependable source of information and analysis. Because in the TV, in the net and all that, there are limitations about time and, or the restrictions are there. But in the newspaper, generally speaking, decent newspapers, responsible newspapers and well-reputed newspapers devote sufficient time to discussion and analysis. So that is where newspaper reading becomes important. And why do we need to read them? Because if you look at the pattern of questions that came up, now I'll touch upon that, you will realize that many of the questions, I would not say the majority, but a substantial portion of the question, substantial segment or part of the questions related to what is reflected in the newspaper. I'll just give you 2 or 3 examples, simple examples, so that you easily remember them. There are plenty. In fact, the 100 questions, if I had time, I would have dealt with about 50 of them to show you how newspaper reading would enable you to answer that. So let me just show you, for example, a couple of things. Now, this is a paper I have kept readily to show you. And this was published on 11th of August, just about a couple of months ago. And this, you can see the Hindu paper. This is about ruins of an Indus Valley civilization site. All of you know about Harappan civilization, that is the Indus Valley civilization. A new site has come to light through excavation that is called Dholavira. Dholavira is a place in Gujarat, in the Ran of Kutch, and where this particular civilizational segment has come to light, has emerged, and that has been given the status of a UNESCO heritage site. UNESCO is an international organization which selects very, very important monuments as well as sites where history is preserved either in the form of monuments or structures or certain documents or like excavations bring to light. One major excavation is going on in Kodungalur. You all know about Pattanam project, which has been able to bring about very active trade relations between the Roman Empire and South Asia, including Southeast Asia, particularly in relation to Kerala. And Kodungalur and the Kerala coast happened to have been a very active hub, a very active center for these kinds of trade activities. So that excavation is going on by the Kerala Historical Council. I think they are manning it. And number of, thousands of Roman coins have been discovered there. Not only here, there are other places, Pondicherry and other places also have yielded gold coins from Roman times, 1st century AD or even before that, 3rd century BC, and all that coins have come up. Now, this kind of excavation brought to light our Harappan civilization. Otherwise, we had no knowledge of what had really, there was no history available to us until, the Harappan civilization was brought to light. Those places are now in Mohenjo-daro, Harappa, or in Pakistan. But in the undivided India, these civilizations brought to light a very active cultural advancement, even in, say, 3000 BC, 2750 BC, before Christ. That is how many years ago? Almost 5000 years ago, we had a very lively, vibrant civilization which had excelled, or which had gone far ahead of other civilizations existing, including Mesopotamia and others. We were equal, or if not equal, equal and sometimes even better than that in relation to some of our achievements. For instance, town planning. We had a very organized town planning, and we had a system of water harvesting and water management, which we hear about today in the the whole of India as well as in other countries. We are worried about how to manage, how to save water, and how to manage water resources. This Dholavira, the paper that I showed you, brought up an very fabulous system of water management 3000 years ago. So this came up in the Hindu on 11th of August, and this has figured in the examination paper which has come up now day before yesterday. Dholavira was, this particular thing was in the knowledge of the UPSC, or in the knowledge in the public domain, as we say. Everyone knew about it about 2 or 3 years ago, when the Unesco, United Nations organization, thought it fit to give it a UNESCO heritage status that is given only to selected sites. So it was in knowledge, but it came up in the paper in the month of August, and in October, when the exam took place, it has come. So it's only to tell you that even history, very ancient history, can be a subject matter of study in your reading of a newspaper very carefully. And if you paid attention, what is required is you should be able to understand and judge that what is the particular importance and relevance of this newspaper item. Otherwise, a whole lot of things come up in the newspaper. In fact, I don't, honestly speaking, I don't read much of Malayalam newspaper for the simple reason the paper is full of events that take place, day to day, about crime, about all kinds of, political controversies, and differences between political parties, within parties, outside parties. So they don't really give you anything of importance, generally speaking. Sometimes they do write Mathrubhumi, Manorama, and all. They do write serious articles, but generally speaking, it is all full of local interest, and that is what our people are interested. So the newspapers also cater to the customers' views and interests. So the Hindu paper, to my mind, is a very dependable paper for civil service examination. So is the case with Indian Express, the Delhi edition, the Times of India, Economic Times, Hindustan Times. They're all not easily available in a place like your place probably, but the Hindu paper I'm sure will be available. So as a student in the graduation class, you should start reading the newspaper regularly, particularly paying attention to what is important for the country, for your society, for the environment, and for your continuous, study and prepare for what is likely to happen in terms of farmers agitation, for instance. It is a matter of great grave consequences, so we need to follow up. So that judgment you have to develop, and that will be possible with some guidance, because you have a cell there, and you have your teachers in economics and others are there, and various subjects. They will be also able to help you. An institute can help you, but newspaper reading is a fundamental requirement. This is one example of what current affairs reading of newspaper can do in regard to ancient history. Now I'll come to another more recent history. Again, a question which came up in the examination day before yesterday. Not one, there were 3 questions relating to one particular place or one particular legacy, one particular history of India. It is about the Vijayanagara Empire, which was in zenith, which was in its very prominent Indian Hindu kingdom in the 14th, 15th century. So right up to 16th century, it was a very prominent civilization. Very prominent kingdom. The Vijayanagara Empire had been. Krishnadeva, all of you would be familiar at least with the name, and which had, in fact, one Italian visitor, Nicola Conti, who came to visit that place, described the Vijayanagara Hampi, that was the capital, as the second largest city in the world. You will be surprised to hear that the South Indian kingdom could have achieved such a glorious reputation in the 15th or 16th century. And Vasco da Gama came, to Calicut in 1498. Around the same time, in the same period, the Krishnadeva had not only established a large kingdom, including parts of Kerala, but also had built up a wonderful cultural center, promoting arts and science and music and literature, languages. So it was an extensively important kingdom at that time, but it is now in ruins. It has not been preserved properly. So this is a simple background of an extremely important empire about which there are 3 questions, of course, in 3 different manners. But 3 questions make a mention of Vijayanagara Empire in the examination that took place day before yesterday. And why do you think that the question paper would have mentioned the Vijayanagara Empire 3 times? And why was it, the UPSC thought of it? It is again for another topical reason. That's the reason which pertains to events happening today and reported in the newspaper. There is a demand from Karnataka because Vijayanagara Empire, the former empire, belongs to a district today what is called the Bellary area, bordering on almost near Hyderabad. The Bellary district is where Vijayanagara Empire had its headquarters in 15th, 16th century. Now, that particular place, as I said, was become world famous, and this question of its ruin has been bothering many people who are proud of our heritage of such a glorious kingdom. So there was a demand from Karnataka that something should be done by the Karnataka government to bring it back to some degree of respectability, some degree of reputation and honor, so that the rest of the world should know that we are taking care of our monuments, our history, and our legacy. We are proud of it. We are maintaining it. So the then Chief Minister, Mr. Yediyurappa, had promised in 2020 that he will make a separate district by the name Vijayanagar. There is no place called Vijayanagar today. We only know about the name Hampi, and Bellary is the district. So Mr. Yediyurappa promised this in 2020, and in 2021, I think February, it came in all the newspapers that, look here, we are now reviving all the glory, at least to the extent that we can do, even though we cannot replicate what Krishnadevara had done or his predecessors did, but to the extent that it is within the possibility, within the powers of the state government to do it, we'll create a new district with a new collector and a new superintendent of police and all the government support, and we will provide additional funds for this, bringing up a new district called Vijayanagar in the name of the ancient. Again, a matter, which is of pride and honor to the state, that was reported widely in the press, and that has now been asked in the day before yesterday's paper on 3 different occasions. Of course, Vijayanagara Empire is mentioned in 3 different questions, but the basis of this particular question definitely goes back to the efforts of the Karnataka government to revive and to restore the ancient glory of this particular area by bringing it up in the form of there is some disturbance, I think.
There is some disturbance. Yeah, it is now
Yeah.
fine, sir.
Am I audible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You are audible.
Okay. Anyway, so this is another, Vijayanagara Empire, something of a great legacy, of a great pride, a historical heritage, which we are trying to revive and restore. That was reported in the press, and that is why it has come up. So if you had been reading the newspaper carefully, and if you understood the importance of a place like Vijayanagara, or an empire, or a tradition, or a history of the glorious kingdom that existed, then you would have definitely recorded it in your brain, in your mind, that this is something which we need to pursue, which we need to see how Vijayanagara is going to be, how that tradition is going to be revived in the next few. So this is another way of looking at an examination question relating to history, but as part of your current affairs reading of the newspaper. Now I'll speak about 2 more examples, again from history only, so that, because you will wonder, in current affairs, how can there be history? Current affairs relates to events which are happening today. That is why we called it current, which are already happening. But current affairs in UPSC's, interpretation, of course, it relates to everything that is happening today in the country today. And here again, I would like to make a mention that this this paper, which was, in the prelims examination, which came before us, there was a surprising omission that a large number of schemes that had been introduced by the government of India during the last 1 year, particularly in relation to COVID and other things, they did not come. COVID did come. I'll come to that when I mention science. But the large number of schemes like Ujjwala scheme and so many others which Prime Minister had initiated, none of which was, they were all current and they are all important. But even so, the UPSC did not include any one of them. They gave more importance to history and to, ecology and others, which I'll deal with after this. So the third question, now I'll come back to the history part of it. The third question, again, 2 or 3 occasions they were referenced to Indian the national freedom struggle, and 2 or 3 questions came up. I'll only like to mention one. It relates to a school, a girls' school called Hindu Female School. It was established, I think, in 1833 or something, 1833, 200 years ago, as a school in Calcutta. Later on, it came to be known by the name Bethune School. So this is only part of the question, and you would not know. None of you would have heard about such a thing. Bethune, the name of an English officer, very senior functionary in the British government in those days. School was opened. Earlier, it was known as Hindu Female School. In those days, no Hindu girls were allowed to go to school. There was no practice in those days. This was the earliest school which was open to girls, and it became an extremely important institution in the history of national freedom struggle, because people derived, a lot of inspiration from the example of people like, there's several. The one important person is Ishar Chandra Vidyasagar. I'm sure some of you would have heard. He was a prominent social activist who promoted girls' education, and who himself became a secretary to this school. And then, that renamed as Bethune School in the name of an Englishman. But Vidyasagar remained associated with the school, and he was able to establish similar institutions in other places also to promote girls' education. And this particular thing is something which was important enough to be remembered this year, because 2021-22 would be 75 years of India's independence. And there was another occasion. This also was the birth centenary of Subhash Chandra Bose. In fact, he was also associated with, of course, in a much later date, because he came into this picture later. But this school contributed revolutionary girls to the national freedom struggle. That is the specialty of this school. 3 of the girls who studied there became martyrs virtually. One girl, in fact, got injured in a raid on the armory. She carried fire, and they were trained in firearms. These are, I'm mentioning the detail because they are so striking, you cannot forget those. A girls' school started in 1833. By the time it came in 1897, 1910, 1932, those periods when agitation in the national freedom struggle was at its peak, these girls were bold enough to even take up firearms and shoot at a governor of.
So there seems to be some disturbance, sir.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, now it is fine. I
Shall
guess
I
there is
carry
some.
on?
PC Suresh, sir, may yeah, it is muted now.
Is it okay now?
Yeah, it is okay now. So
Oh,
there
yeah.
are some questions also.
Okay.
So
I'll take only 5 minutes
okay,
more.
okay,
Is it
okay.
okay?
Yeah, it is okay. Sir. I think it is fine.
By 11:30, I'll try to finish, because
Okay, sir.
I just want to mention this.
Okay,
So
sir.
here again, the 2 or 3 questions touched upon this particular school in the exam, in the question paper, because of the fact that it was associated with the national freedom struggle and with this, particular incident relating to girls taking up arms and all that. So that history also, it was all reported in the press in the course of August, and when Independence Day was being celebrated, it was all widely reported. So here again, it's a matter which normally we will not take much notice of it, but if you are a student, keen student, then you will have to remember the details so that you develop the information, you read more about it. So when the question comes, you are in a position to give all the facts, give your analysis, and come to a conclusion. Then, of course, Ajanta caves, again belonging to 3rd century BC. I don't wish to go into that. But there again, a UNESCO activity, not UNESCO, sorry, it is a Norway government's activity to restore Ajanta paintings, which belong to 3rd century BC to 8th century AD, the 800 or more years. Those precious, priceless paintings which were used, which are still preserved. Some of it got damaged. That is now being restored with the use of artificial intelligence methods. Anyway, I have no time to go into that. So to summarize, all that I'm trying to say is your time now in the first year, second year, third year of your graduation should be spent fruitfully in reading the newspaper carefully and judging what news or what event or what issue is likely to is already important and is likely to grow in importance in the coming years, so that you keep on reading and broadening your awareness and also deepening your understanding. Gather more information, read better about it, because the newspaper article might give you only this much of space, but then you have, if you are interested, if you feel inspired to read more about it, collect more information, so that these are likely to be growing importance in the days to come. So that kind of a constant attention to developments is required in the course of preparation that you do in the next couple of years or 3 years. The same thing applies to science, ecology, and environment, which are going to be extremely important. Public health, for instance. In these areas, new developments are taking place, and those are being reported not only in the Hindu or in a daily newspaper, but also in other journals and publications which come out from time to time. So if you are able to keep your mind alive, alert to events happening, and able to judge their importance not only today, but likely to be growing in importance in the days to come, that will be the best kind of preparation that you can do for the civil service examination, as you also carry on with your graduate studies for BA, BSc, BCom, whatever it is. I think I'll conclude with this, because even though the time is very limited, I couldn't find more time to devote to other subjects, like for instance constitution and all. It will take more time. Within the limited time available, I have already tried to show you how newspaper reading is important for current affairs, and current affairs is not confined to things which are happening for the, the UPSC examination. As I said, important schemes initiated also have not been taken up for current affairs, but current affairs as reported in a newspaper relating to very ancient stories, they have been brought up in the exam. So that degree of understanding will be required to judge whether a particular news item is relevant and important for the examination. I think I'll finish with that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, students, for the patient listening. നിങ്ങൾക്ക് എന്തെങ്കിലും ചോദ്യങ്ങൾ ഉണ്ടെങ്കിൽ ഇപ്പൊ ചോദിക്കാവുന്നതാണ്. ഒരു ക്വസ്റ്റ്യൻ കണ്ടായിരുന്നു, എങ്ങനെയാണ് ഇത് തുടങ്ങുക എന്നുള്ളത്. നമുക്കൊരു ടു സ്റ്റാർട്ട് ഓഫ് വിത്ത് സിവിൽ സർവീസ് പ്രിപ്പറേഷൻ എങ്ങനെ തുടങ്ങും എന്നുള്ള ഒരു ചോദ്യം കണ്ടിരുന്നു. അതല്ലാതെ വേറെ എന്ത് ചോദ്യം ഉണ്ടെങ്കിലും നിങ്ങൾക്ക് ചാറ്റ് വിൻഡോയിൽ ഇടാം. ജോഷ്ന, ഐ തിങ്ക് യു ഹാവ് എ ക്വസ്റ്റ്യൻ. അൺമ്യൂട്ട് ചെയ്ത് ചോദിക്കാം, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ മലയാളത്തിലാണെങ്കിലും ചോദിച്ചാൽ മതി കേട്ടോ, കുഴപ്പമൊന്നുമില്ല.
മലയാളത്തിൽ ചോദിക്കാം. ഞാൻ കുറെ വർഷങ്ങൾ പുറത്തായിരുന്നുകൊണ്ട് ഞാൻ ഇംഗ്ലീഷിൽ അങ്ങനെ പറഞ്ഞ് പ്രാക്ടീസ്.
ജോഷ്ന, എന്താ ക്വസ്റ്റ്യൻ എന്ന് വെച്ച് കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ ചോദിക്കാം. ഐ സോ യുവർ റേസ്ഡ് ഹാൻഡ്. വേറെ സർ ഒരു ചോദ്യം ഉണ്ട് സർ, അതായത് നമുക്ക് എങ്ങനെ ഈ ഒരു സിവിൽ സർവീസ് പ്രിപ്പറേഷൻ നമ്മൾ എങ്ങനെ സ്റ്റാർട്ട് ചെയ്യും എന്നുള്ളത്, ലൈക്ക് ഒന്നും അറിയാത്ത ഒരാൾ എങ്ങനെ നമ്മൾ സ്റ്റാർട്ട് ചെയ്യും എന്നുള്ളത്.
ഓക്കെ, 2-3 കാര്യങ്ങൾ ചുരുക്കി പറയാം. ഒന്ന്, ആദ്യമായിട്ട് ഞാൻ പറയുന്നത്, നിങ്ങൾ UPSCയുടെ സിലബസ് ഒന്ന് വായിച്ച് നോക്കുക. എന്താണ് ഓരോ സബ്ജക്റ്റിലും, എത്ര സബ്ജക്റ്റ് ഉണ്ട്, ആ സിലബസ് എന്തൊക്കെയാണ് UPSC പ്രതീക്ഷിക്കുന്നുള്ള പരീക്ഷയെ പറ്റി അതൊന്ന് വായിക്കുക. ബേസിക് ആയിട്ടുള്ള ഒരു കാര്യം അതാണ്. 2, അത് മനസ്സിലാക്കി കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ, ഞാൻ ഈ പറഞ്ഞ ഗ്രൂപ്പുകൾ, അതുകൊണ്ട് ഞാൻ ആദ്യം വിശദീകരിക്കാൻ പരിശ്രമിച്ചത്. കാര്യം ദ്രുതഗതിയിലാണ് പറഞ്ഞതെന്ന് എനിക്ക് കൃത്യമായിട്ടൊന്നും എല്ലാം പോയിന്റ് ഔട്ട് ചെയ്യാൻ കഴിഞ്ഞിരിക്കില്ല. എങ്കിലും ആ ഗ്രൂപ്പ് വൈസ് നിങ്ങൾ മനസ്സിലാക്കി കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ അതിന് പഠനത്തിന് സഹായകരമായിട്ടുള്ള ബുക്സ് നിങ്ങൾക്ക് ഇപ്പം തന്നെ വേണമെങ്കിൽ വായിക്കാൻ ആരംഭിക്കാം. ഏറ്റവും എളുപ്പം NCERTയുടെ ബുക്കുകൾ തന്നെയാണ്. എല്ലാവരും നിങ്ങൾക്ക് പറഞ്ഞു തരും. എല്ലാ വെബ്സൈറ്റ് നോക്കിയാലും നിങ്ങൾക്ക് കാണാം. NCERT ആണ് നമുക്ക് ഇപ്പോൾ ലഭിക്കാവുന്ന, ഇവിടെ കിട്ടാവുന്നതിൽ ഏറ്റവും വില കുറഞ്ഞതും അതേസമയം വളരെ വാല്യുബിൾ ആയിട്ടുള്ള, വളരെ വളരെ ആധികാരികമായിട്ടുള്ള പഠനങ്ങളാണ് NCERTയുടെ ടെക്സ്റ്റ് ബുക്കിലുള്ളത്. പ്രത്യേകിച്ച് സോഷ്യൽ ഇഷ്യൂസ്, അതിനെപ്പറ്റിയുള്ള പഠനം, ഇക്കണോമിക്സ്, പിന്നെ ജോഗ്രഫി, എൻവയൺമെൻറ്റ്, ഇങ്ങനെയുള്ള 4, പിന്നെ ഹിസ്റ്ററി. ഓഫ് കോഴ്സ് ഹിസ്റ്ററി ഞാൻ വിശദമായിട്ട് കുറേ പറഞ്ഞു. ഈ 5 വിഷയങ്ങളിലുള്ള NCERT ടെക്സ്റ്റ് ബുക്ക് നിങ്ങളൊരു 8ാം ക്ലാസ്സോ 9ാം ക്ലാസ്സോ തുടങ്ങിയുള്ള ടെക്സ്റ്റ് ബുക്കുകൾ ഉണ്ടെന്നുണ്ടെങ്കിൽ നിങ്ങളുടെ വീട്ടിലോ അയൽവക്കത്തോ അല്ലെങ്കിൽ നിങ്ങളുടെ സുഹൃത്തുക്കളുടെയോ കയ്യിലൊക്കെ ഉണ്ടെങ്കിൽ അത് കളയാതെ അത് സൂക്ഷിച്ചു വെച്ചുകൊണ്ട് അത് വായിച്ച് പഠിക്കുകയാണ് അതിനുള്ള പ്രാരംഭമായിട്ടുള്ള എനിക്ക് സജസ്റ്റ് ചെയ്യാനുള്ള ഒരു മാർഗം. അതിൻ്റെ കൂടെ ഞാൻ നേരത്തെ പറഞ്ഞ പോലെ ന്യൂസ് പേപ്പർ വായനയെ ആരംഭിക്കുക. ഒരു ന്യൂസ് പേപ്പറെങ്കിലും നിങ്ങളുടെ വീട്ടിൽ കിട്ടാവുന്നുണ്ടെങ്കിൽ ഒരു ഇംഗ്ലീഷ് ന്യൂസ് പേപ്പർ, മലയാളം മാത്രം മതിയെന്ന് ഞാൻ വിചാരിക്കുന്നില്ല. ഇംഗ്ലീഷ് ന്യൂസ് പേപ്പർ സാധിക്കുമെങ്കിൽ, അവൈലബിൾ ആണെങ്കിൽ ഹിന്ദു ന്യൂസ് പേപ്പർ വരുത്താൻ ശ്രമിക്കുക. ഈ 3 കാര്യങ്ങൾ ആരംഭിച്ചാൽ എനിക്ക് തോന്നുന്നു നല്ലൊരു ബിഗിനിങ് ആവും. ഇത്രയേ എനിക്ക് അതിനെപ്പറ്റി പറയാനുള്ളൂ.
അപ്പം ഇപ്പൊ നമ്മള് ചാറ്റിൽ ഇട്ടിട്ടുണ്ട്, UPSCയുടെ വെബ്സൈറ്റ് ഇട്ടിട്ടുണ്ട്, അവിടെ സിലബസും കാര്യങ്ങളും ഉണ്ട്. സോ വേറെ എന്തെങ്കിലും ചോദ്യങ്ങൾ ഉണ്ടെങ്കിൽ യു ക്യാൻ ആസ്ക് ഇതിൽ. കാരണം നിങ്ങൾ എല്ലാവരും സിവിൽ സർവീസിലോട്ട് താല്പര്യമുള്ളവരാണെന്നാണ് നമ്മൾ ടീച്ചേഴ്സിന്റെ അടുത്ത് നിന്ന് അറിഞ്ഞത്. സോ അപ്പം പ്രത്യേകിച്ച് ഇങ്ങനെ ഉള്ള സ്റ്റാൾവേർഡ്സിന്റെ ഈ ഒരു സമയത്ത്, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഇങ്ങനെ ഇബ്രാഹിം സാറിനെ പോലെ ശ്രീക് സാറിനെ പോലെ ഉള്ളവർ ഉള്ള സമയത്ത് നമുക്ക് ഇങ്ങനെ ചോദ്യങ്ങൾ ചോദിച്ച് മനസ്സിലാക്കാൻ പറ്റുന്ന ഒരു ഓപ്പർച്യൂണിറ്റി എപ്പോഴും കിട്ടാറില്ല. അപ്പൊ അതുകൊണ്ട് ആർക്ക് വേണമെങ്കിലും എന്ത് വേണമെങ്കിലും ചോദിക്കാം, ഒരു മടിയും വിചാരിക്കണ്ട. ആർക്കെങ്കിലും എന്തെങ്കിലും ചോദ്യങ്ങളോ അല്ലെങ്കിൽ നിങ്ങൾക്ക് ചാറ്റ് വിൻഡോയിലാണെങ്കിലും ഇടാം. Any questions you have? സർ ഓക്കെ സർ, ഒരു ചോദ്യം എന്ന് പറയുന്നത് UPSC ഇന്റർവ്യൂവില് ഫെയിൽ ചെയ്താൽ അതിനാ എന്താണ് ചോദ്യം ഉദ്ദേശിക്കുന്നത്? വാട്ട് ഹാപ്പൻസ് ഇഫ് ഐ ഫെയിൽ ഇൻ UPSC ഇന്റർവ്യൂ എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞാൽ ചോദ്യം കൊണ്ട് എന്താണ് ഉദ്ദേശിക്കുന്നതെന്നൊന്ന് പറയാവോ? അൺമ്യൂട്ട് ചെയ്ത് പറഞ്ഞാലും മതി.
എനിക്ക് UPSC ഇന്റർവ്യൂവിൽ ഫെയിൽ ആവുകയാണെങ്കിൽ ഇപ്പോ തുടർന്ന് IAS അല്ലെങ്കിൽ IPSലേക്ക് പോകാൻ പറ്റുമോ? അതോ വേറെ ഏതെങ്കിലും ഫീൽഡ് പറ്റുമോ?
UPSC ഇന്റർവ്യൂ എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞാൽ മെയിൻസ് എക്സാമിനേഷൻ കഴിഞ്ഞിട്ടാണ് UPSC ഇന്റർവ്യൂവിന് പോവുക. അപ്പോൾ ഇന്റർവ്യൂവിൽ ഫെയിൽ ചെയ്തെന്ന് പറഞ്ഞാൽ റാങ്കിൽ നമ്മൾ പെടുന്നില്ല എന്ന് ഇരിക്കട്ടെ. 1100 വേക്കല്ല 762 വേക്കൻസി ഉള്ളൂ. അപ്പോൾ ആ റാങ്ക് ലിസ്റ്റിൽ നമുക്ക് വരുന്നില്ല എന്നുണ്ടെങ്കിൽ പിന്നെ നമുക്ക് ചെയ്യാവുന്നത് രണ്ടാമത് അതേ തരത്തിൽ പ്രിലിമിനറി മുതൽ പരീക്ഷ എഴുതെങ്കിൽ മാത്രമേ അടുത്ത പ്രാവശ്യം നമുക്ക് എഴുതാൻ പറ്റും. ഇങ്ങനെ 6 ചാൻസസ് ഇപ്പോൾ എല്ലാവർക്കും ഉണ്ട്. 6 പ്രാവശ്യം നമുക്ക് അതേ പരീക്ഷ തന്നെ എഴുതാം ഒരു പ്രാവശ്യം കിട്ടിയില്ലെങ്കിൽ. പക്ഷെ ഓരോ പ്രാവശ്യവും പ്രിലിമിനറിയും മെയിനും ഇൻ്റർവ്യൂ ഈ 3 സ്റ്റേജ് കടക്കണം. അതാണ് UPSC പരീക്ഷയുടെ ഫൈനലിലുള്ള ഒരു പ്രത്യേകത. അതുകൊണ്ടാണ് ഒരു പ്രാവശ്യവും നേരത്തെ ജയിച്ച പ്രിലിമിനറിയും മെയിൻ പരീക്ഷ രണ്ടാമത് അതുകൊണ്ട് അത് പ്രയോജനപ്പെടില്ല. ആദ്യം തുടങ്ങി രണ്ടാമത്, അങ്ങനെ 6 ചാൻസ് നമുക്ക് എഴുതാം. പിന്നെ രണ്ടാമത്തെ കാര്യം, ഈ പറഞ്ഞ പഠനം കൊണ്ട് UPSC ഇൻ്റർവ്യൂ വരെ എത്തിയതുകൊണ്ട് നമുക്ക് പ്രത്യേകിച്ച് ജോലിയൊന്നും അതിനായിട്ട് കിട്ടുകയില്ല. പക്ഷേ ഈ പഠനം കൊണ്ട് നമുക്ക് മറ്റ് പരീക്ഷകൾ, ഇപ്പോൾ KS കേരള അഡ്മിനിസ്ട്രേറ്റീവ് സർവീസ് ഉണ്ട്, പിന്നെ സ്റ്റാഫ് സെലക്ഷൻ കമ്മീഷൻ ഉണ്ട്, അങ്ങനെ ഈവൻ മറ്റു CDS എക്സാമിനേഷൻ ഉണ്ട്, സിവിൽ ഡിഫൻസ് സെൻട്രൽ ഡിഫൻസ് സർവീസസ് ഉണ്ട്. എല്ലാത്തിനും ഈ പറഞ്ഞ നോളജ്, ഇതേ ബാക്ക്ഗ്രൗണ്ട് ഉള്ളവർക്ക് മറ്റ് പരീക്ഷകൾ എഴുതാൻ ഈ അറിവ് നമ്മളെ സഹായിക്കും എന്നുള്ളതാണ് ഇതിൻ്റെ പ്രധാന കാര്യം. അല്ലാതെ ഇൻ്റർവ്യൂ വരെ എത്തിയോണ്ട് ഒരു പ്രത്യേകിച്ച് ജോലിയോ അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഒരു പ്രത്യേകിച്ച് ഏതെങ്കിലും അസൈൻമെൻറ്റോ ഒന്നും കിട്ടുമെന്ന് നമുക്ക് പ്രതീക്ഷിക്കാൻ പറ്റില്ല. ഇതാണ് അതിൻ്റെ ലിമിറ്റേഷനും. അതേസമയം അതിൻ്റെ ബെനിഫിറ്റും ഇതാണ്. ബാങ്ക് പരീക്ഷകൾ പോലും നമുക്ക് എഴുതാൻ സിവിൽ സർവീസ് പരീക്ഷയുടെ പഠനം സഹായകരമാവും.
ഓക്കെ സർ, താങ്ക് യു.
സർ, ഒരു ക്വസ്റ്റ്യൻ വന്നിട്ടുണ്ട്. അതായത് KS-നെ പറ്റി ഒന്ന് ചെറുതായിട്ടൊന്ന് ബ്രീഫ് ചെയ്യുമായിരുന്നെങ്കിൽ. ഇപ്പൊ സർ KS മെൻഷൻ ചെയ്തപ്പോൾ
പരീക്ഷ സിവിൽ സർവീസ് പാറ്റേൺ പോലെ തന്നെയാണ്. ഏകദേശം 3 സ്റ്റേജ് ഉണ്ട്, പ്രിലിമിനറി, മെയിനും ഇൻ്റർവ്യൂ ഉണ്ട്. ഇക്കൊല്ലം ആദ്യമായിട്ടാണ് KS-ന്റെ പരീക്ഷ നടന്നത്. അപ്പോൾ എനിക്ക് വിശദവിവരം ഒന്ന് പറയാൻ ഇത്രേ ഉള്ളൂ. ഞാൻ വായിച്ചിടത്തോളം അതിൻ്റെ സിലബസിലുള്ള ഒരു പ്രത്യേകത, ഒരു അഡീഷണൽ ഫാക്ടർ ഉള്ളത് കേരള ഡെവലപ്മെൻറ്റ്, കേരള എക്കണോമിക്സ്, കേരള ജോഗ്രഫി, കേരള ഹിസ്റ്ററി, ഈ പറഞ്ഞത് വളരെ വളരെ വിശദമായിട്ട് അവർ ചോദിച്ചായിട്ട് ഞാൻ കാണുന്നുണ്ട് സിലബസ് നോക്കിയത്. ബാക്കിയെല്ലാം തന്നെ ഏകദേശം ഇതിനോട് ചേർന്ന് പോകുന്ന പോലെ തന്നെയാണ്. പിന്നെ ഇംഗ്ലീഷ് കോംപ്രഹെൻഷനും ഒക്കെ തന്നെ ഇത് സിവിൽ സർവീസിലും ഉണ്ട്, KS-ലും ഉണ്ട്. അതേപോലെ മലയാളം ഭാഷയും ചരിത്രവും മലയാള സാഹിത്യവും അങ്ങനെയുള്ള കാര്യങ്ങളും ഇതിൽ പ്രാധാന്യം അർഹിക്കുന്നുണ്ട്. അപ്പോൾ ഈ 2-3 പ്രത്യേകതകൾ ഒഴിച്ചാൽ ബാക്കി ഞാൻ നേരത്തെ പറഞ്ഞ പോലെ സിവിൽ സർവീസ് പരീക്ഷയുടെ അതേ സിലബസും അതേ നോളജ് ലെവലും അതേ റേഞ്ച് ഓഫ് സബ്ജക്ട്സും ഒരുപോലെ തന്നെയാണ് KS-നും. കാരണം രണ്ടിൻ്റെ ഉദ്ദേശം ഒന്നാണ്. ഇത് കേരള അഡ്മിനിസ്ട്രേറ്റീവ് സർവീസ് ഇപ്പോൾ സിവിൽ സർവീസ് IAS ഓഫീസേഴ്സ് ചെയ്യുന്ന അതേ എന്താ പറയുക, അതേ പ്രവർത്തന മണ്ഡലം തന്നെയായിരിക്കും KS-നും ഉണ്ടാവുക. അപ്പോൾ അതുകൊണ്ട് വലിയ വ്യത്യാസം ഉണ്ടാകാനുള്ള യാതൊരു സ്കോപ്പില്ല. ഈ പറഞ്ഞ കേരള സംബന്ധിതമായ വിഷയങ്ങൾ കൂടുതൽ ഊന്നൽ കൊടുക്കുന്നു എന്നൊരു വ്യത്യാസമാണ്.
സർ, ഒരു ചോദ്യം കൂടെ ഉണ്ടായിരുന്നു ഓപ്ഷണൽസിനെ പറ്റിയിട്ടേ. ഓപ്ഷണൽസിനെ പറ്റിയിട്ട് ഒരു ബ്രീഫായിട്ട് ഒന്ന് പറഞ്ഞായിരുന്നെങ്കിൽ നല്ലതായിരുന്നു എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞാൽ അതെങ്ങനെ പ്രിപ്പയർ ചെയ്യണം എന്നുള്ളത്.
അതെ, വിശദമായിട്ട് പറയേണ്ട വിഷയമാണെങ്കിൽ ഞാൻ ബ്രീഫായിട്ട് പറയാൻ അതെ സമയമില്ലെങ്കിൽ ഞാൻ 2 കാര്യങ്ങൾ മാത്രം സൂചിപ്പിക്കാം. ഓപ്ഷണൽ എന്ന് പറയുന്ന ഒരു 23-26 വിഷയങ്ങളുണ്ട്. അഗ്രികൾച്ചർ തുടങ്ങി എല്ലാ വിഷയങ്ങളും നമുക്ക് എടുക്കാം. മെഡിസിൻ, എഞ്ചിനീയറിംഗ്, എല്ലാ വിഷയങ്ങളും ഉണ്ട്. പക്ഷേ ഈ 20-26 വിഷയങ്ങളുണ്ടെങ്കിലും നമ്മൾ ഏത് വിഷയമാണ് ചൂസ് ചെയ്യുക എന്നുള്ളതാണ് ഒരു പ്രധാനപ്പെട്ട ഒരു ഘടകം. അപ്പോൾ നിങ്ങൾ ഫസ്റ്റ് ഇയർ BA, BSc, BCom ചെയ്യുന്ന ഒരാളിന് 3rd ഇയർ കഴിയുമ്പോൾ ഏത് വിഷയത്തിലാണ് കൂടുതൽ താല്പര്യമെന്ന് മനസ്സിലാക്കിയിരുന്നാൽ ആ വിഷയത്തെപ്പറ്റി ഒന്നുകിൽ നമുക്ക് പോസ്റ്റ് ഗ്രാജുവേഷൻ ചെയ്യാം, ഇല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഇപ്പോഴേ നിങ്ങൾ പ്രിപ്പറേഷൻ സിവിൽ സർവീസിന് ആരംഭിക്കുകയാണെങ്കിൽ 3 വർഷം കഴിയുമ്പോഴേക്ക് ഒരു സബ്ജക്റ്റ് ഏതെങ്കിലും നിങ്ങൾക്ക് താല്പര്യമുള്ളതായിട്ട് കാണുകയാണെങ്കിൽ ആ വിഷയത്തിനായിട്ട്, ഇപ്പോൾ ഉദാഹരണത്തിന് ഇപ്പോൾ നിങ്ങളൊരു BSc സ്റ്റുഡൻ്റ് ആണെന്ന് വിചാരിക്കുക, പക്ഷേ നിങ്ങളുടെ താല്പര്യം ഇംഗ്ലീഷ് ലിറ്ററേച്ചർ ആവാം, അല്ലെ മലയാളം ലിറ്ററേച്ചർ ആവാം. അപ്പോൾ BSc പഠിക്കുന്ന ഒരാൾ മലയാളം സെക്കൻഡ് ലാംഗ്വേജ് എടുത്ത് പഠിക്കുന്നുണ്ട്, പക്ഷെ മലയാളത്തിനോട് വളരെ താല്പര്യമുണ്ടെന്ന് അപ്പോഴാണ് മനസ്സിലായത്. അപ്പോൾ മലയാളം വായിച്ചു തുടങ്ങാൻ BSc കഴിയുമ്പോൾ 1 വർഷം മലയാളം ഓപ്ഷണലായിട്ട് എടുക്കാനുള്ള ടെക്സ്റ്റ് ബുക്കും സിലബസും ഒക്കെ UPSC പറയുന്നുണ്ട്. അത് 1 വർഷത്തേക്ക് നന്നായിട്ട് ശ്രദ്ധിച്ച് പഠിച്ചുകൊണ്ടിരുന്നാൽ നിങ്ങൾക്ക് മലയാളം എടുത്ത് ഓപ്ഷൻ എടുത്ത് ചെയ്യുക. ഇതുപോലെ ഇത് സപ്ലൈസ് ടു എവറി അതർ സബ്ജക്ട്. ഏത് വിഷയമാണെങ്കിലും നിങ്ങൾ പഠിച്ചുകൊണ്ടിരിക്കുന്ന വിഷയത്തിലും ചെയ്യാം, നിങ്ങൾ പഠിച്ചിട്ടില്ലാത്ത വിഷയത്തിൽ മനസ്സുകൊണ്ട് താല്പര്യമുള്ള വിഷയത്തിലും നല്ല എന്താ പറയുന്നത് ഒരു പാഷനറ്റ് ഇൻട്രസ്റ്റ് ഉള്ള വിഷയത്തിലേക്ക് സൈക്കോളജിയോ ഫിലോസഫിയോ പൊളിറ്റിക്കൽ സയൻസോ പബ്ലിക് അഡ്മിനിസ്ട്രേഷനോ സോഷ്യോളജിയോ ഇങ്ങനെയുള്ള എല്ലാ വിഷയങ്ങളിലും ഏതിലാണ് താല്പര്യം എന്ന് വെച്ചാൽ അത് നമുക്ക് ഡെവലപ്പ് ചെയ്തെടുക്കാൻ സാധിക്കുമെങ്കിൽ ആ 3 വർഷം കഴിയുമ്പോഴേക്കും നമുക്ക് 1 വർഷം അതിനായിട്ട് മാറ്റി വയ്ക്കേണ്ടി വരും. കാരണം നിങ്ങളുടെ ഗ്രാജുവേഷൻ പഠനത്തിൻ്റെ സമയത്ത് ഓപ്ഷണൽ തനിയെ പ്രിപ്പയർ ചെയ്യാൻ വിഷമമാണ്. കാരണം ഓപ്ഷണലിൻ്റെ സ്റ്റാൻഡേർഡ് ഓഫ് ക്വസ്റ്റ്യൻസ് MA, MSc അതായത് പോസ്റ്റ് ഗ്രാജുവേഷൻ സ്റ്റാൻഡേർഡ് ആണ് ഉണ്ടാവുക. അതും ഗ്രാജുവേഷനും കൂടെ ഒരുമിച്ച് പഠനം നടത്തുക എന്നുള്ള സാധ്യമായിട്ടുള്ള കാര്യമല്ല. പക്ഷേ ഇത് നമുക്ക് ഇപ്പോൾ തന്നെ ആരംഭിച്ചു തുടങ്ങിയാൽ BA, BSc, BCom കഴിയുമ്പോൾ തന്നെ ഒരു വർഷം നിങ്ങൾ അതിനായിട്ട് പരിശ്രമിക്കുകയാണെങ്കിൽ, പുതിയൊരു വിഷയമാണെങ്കിൽ നിങ്ങളുടെ തന്നെ വിഷയമാണെങ്കിലും കടുത്ത പരിശ്രമം വേണം. കാരണം 2 വർഷം കൊണ്ട് കോളേജിൽ പഠിപ്പിക്കുന്ന വിഷയമാണ് നിങ്ങൾ 1 വർഷം കൊണ്ട് തനിയെ പഠിക്കാൻ. ഒരു നല്ല ഇൻസ്റ്റിറ്റ്യൂട്ടിൽ നന്നായിട്ട് പഠിക്കുന്ന ഒരു കുട്ടിയാണെങ്കിൽ ഒരു ബുദ്ധിമുട്ടും കൂടാതെ ചെയ്യാൻ പറ്റും 1 വർഷം കൊണ്ട്. പിന്നെ വേറെ എന്തോ ഒരു ക്വസ്റ്റ്യനോടെ കണ്ടെന്ന് തോന്നുന്നു.
ഒരു ക്വസ്റ്റ്യൻ ചോദിച്ചേക്കുന്ന സാർ പറഞ്ഞ പോലെ NCERTയുടെ ഷോർട്ട് നോട്ട്സ് എങ്ങനെ നമ്മൾ ഉണ്ടാക്കും എന്നുള്ളതാണ്. അതൊരു ജനറൽ ആയിട്ടുള്ള ഒരു ക്വസ്റ്റ്യൻ.
അതിനെപ്പറ്റി എനിക്ക് പ്രത്യേകിച്ചൊന്നും പറയാനില്ല. നമ്മൾ ക്വസ്റ്റ്യൻ ഞാൻ ആദ്യം പറഞ്ഞ പോലെ UPSCയുടെ ക്വസ്റ്റ്യനും സിലബസും ക്വസ്റ്റ്യനും നോക്കിക്കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ നമുക്ക് മനസ്സിലാവും ഏത് ആസ്പെക്റ്റിലാണ് UPSC പ്രാധാന്യം കൊടുക്കുന്നത്. അതനുസരിച്ച് അതിൽ കോൺസെൻട്രേറ്റ് ചെയ്യാൻ നമുക്ക് നോട്ട്സ് ഉണ്ടാക്കാൻ എളുപ്പമായിരിക്കും. അത്ര മാത്രമേ പറയാൻ കഴിയും. ഇപ്പോൾ സമയക്കുറവുണ്ട്.
നമുക്കിപ്പം ഐ തിങ്ക് നമ്മളിപ്പോൾ 11:40 ആയി. സോ അപ്പോൾ ക്വസ്റ്റ്യൻസ് ഞങ്ങൾ വേറൊരു കാര്യം എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞാൽ നമ്മുടെ അഡ്മിഷൻസ് ഇപ്പോഴും ഓപ്പൺ ആണ്. അപ്പൊ ഞങ്ങൾ ഡീറ്റെയിൽസ് ഇട്ടിട്ടുണ്ട് ചാറ്റ് വിൻഡോയിൽ. ലിങ്ക് വെബ്സൈറ്റിന്റെ ലിങ്ക് ഇട്ടിട്ടുണ്ട്, ഞങ്ങളുടെ ഫോൺ നമ്പേഴ്സും ഇട്ടിട്ടുണ്ട്, ഇമെയിൽ ID ഇട്ടിട്ടുണ്ട്. We will share this with Selma Miss and Rajiv sir and Vinita ma'am as well. സാറുമായിട്ട് ടീച്ചേഴ്സുമായിട്ട് എല്ലാം ഷെയർ ചെയ്യാം. അവരും നിങ്ങൾക്ക് അത് ഷെയർ ചെയ്യാം. അപ്പൊ നിങ്ങൾക്ക് താല്പര്യം ഉണ്ടെങ്കിൽ ഞങ്ങളുടെ കോഴ്സിന് ജോയിൻ ചെയ്യാം. ഈവനിങ്സ് ആണ് ക്ലാസ്. അപ്പൊ നിങ്ങളുടെ റെഗുലർ ക്ലാസ്സസ് അഫക്റ്റ് ആവത്തുമില്ല. സോ 6 to 8 ആണ് നമ്മുടെ ക്ലാസ്സസും വരുന്നത്. ആൻഡ് വി ഹാവ് സർ ഒക്കെ ക്ലാസ് എടുക്കുന്നതിനോട് കൂടെ തന്നെ ഞങ്ങൾക്ക് വളരെ യങ് ആയിട്ടുള്ള കുറെ ഫാക്കൽറ്റി മെമ്പേഴ്സ്, ഇപ്പോഴത്തെ ഞങ്ങളുടെ ടീച്ചേഴ്സ് 3 പേര് പഠിപ്പിക്കുന്നവരാണെങ്കിൽ ഇപ്പം ഇന്റർവ്യൂ വരെ പോയവരാണ് പഠിപ്പിക്കുന്നവർ. അൺഫോർച്ചുനേറ്റ്ലി അവർക്ക് ക്ലിയർ ചെയ്യാൻ പറ്റിയില്ല. KS ക്വാളിഫൈ ചെയ്തവരും അങ്ങനെയൊക്കെ ഉള്ളവരാണ് നമുക്ക് പഠിപ്പിക്കുകയും ചെയ്യുന്നത്. അപ്പം അതിന്റെ ഒരു ഗുണം എന്ന് പറയുന്നത്, നമ്മൾ ഏത് പരീക്ഷയാണെങ്കിലും കുര്യൻ സാർ ഇപ്പൊ പറഞ്ഞതുപോലെ ഓരോ പരീക്ഷയ്ക്ക് ഓരോരോ പാറ്റേൺ ഉണ്ട്. അപ്പൊ ആ പാറ്റേൺ നമ്മൾ മനസ്സിലാക്കി അതനുസരിച്ചിട്ടായിരിക്കണം നമ്മൾ എഴുതേണ്ടത് എന്നുള്ളത്. അപ്പൊ അങ്ങനെയുള്ള ഗൈഡൻസ് ഇപ്പം സാറിനെ പോലെ എക്സ്പീരിയൻസ്ഡ് ആയിട്ടുള്ള ഒരു ഇന്റർവ്യൂ പോർട്ടൽ വരെ ഉള്ളവര് നമുക്ക് പറഞ്ഞു തരുന്നതിനോടൊപ്പം പരീക്ഷ ഇപ്പോൾ എഴുതുന്നവര് കൂടി പറഞ്ഞു തരുമ്പോൾ ഏത് രീതിയിൽ നമുക്ക് ഇത് ചെയ്യാൻ പറ്റുമെന്ന് പറയാം. സോ ദാറ്റ് ഇസ് വൺ ഓഫ് ദ അഡ്വാൻറ്റേജസ് ദാറ്റ് വി ഹാവ്. ആൻഡ് ഫീസ് സ്ട്രക്ചർ ആണെങ്കിലും വളരെ കുറവാണ്. അപ്പൊ അതുകൊണ്ട് ഡീറ്റെയിൽസ് എല്ലാം ഞങ്ങൾ ഒന്നുകൂടെ കൊടുത്തേക്കാം. ഇവിടെയും നമ്മൾ ഡീറ്റെയിൽസ് ഇട്ടിട്ടുണ്ട്. സോ ഐ ഹോപ്പ് നമുക്ക് സമയക്കുറവുകൊണ്ടാണ് ബാക്കി ക്വസ്റ്റ്യൻസ് നമ്മൾ എടുക്കാത്തത്. ബിക്കോസ് ഓരോന്ന് പറഞ്ഞ് ഒത്തിരി ഡീറ്റെയിൽഡ് ആയിട്ട് ഞങ്ങൾ പറയേണ്ടി വരും. കാരണം സാർ ആണെങ്കിലും വളരെ ബ്രീഫായിട്ടാണ് പെട്ടെന്ന് പറഞ്ഞു പോയത്. സോ ദാറ്റ് യു ഗെറ്റ് ഓൾ ദ ഇൻഫർമേഷൻ. അപ്പൊ അതുകൊണ്ട് വൺ തിങ് ഇസ് ലൈക്ക് നമുക്ക് ബാക്കി ക്വസ്റ്റ്യൻസ് ഉണ്ടെങ്കിൽ നിങ്ങൾക്ക് യു ക്യാൻ കോൾ us, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ടീച്ചേഴ്സ് വഴി ഞങ്ങളോട് ചോദിക്കാം. ഞങ്ങളുടെ നമ്പേഴ്സ് ഞങ്ങൾ ഇട്ടിട്ടുണ്ട്. സോ ഐ തിങ്ക് സർ നമുക്കത് ഒന്ന് വൈൻഡ് അപ്പ് ചെയ്തിട്ട് നമുക്ക് വി വിൽ ഹാൻഡ് ഓവർ ടു ദ കോളേജ്. ബാക്കി ടീച്ചറിന്
ഞാൻ ലീവ് ചെയ്തോട്ടെ അപ്പൊ?
ഇല്ല സർ, അവരുടെ ഒരു വോട്ട് ഓഫ് താങ്ക്സ് ഉണ്ടാവും, ഒരു ഫോർമൽ ഇത്. സോ ക്വസ്റ്റ്യൻസ് സെൽമ മിസ്, ഓവർ ടു യു.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you so much for your valuable words. Now I invite Mr. Kishan Kumar, Assistant Professor, Postgraduate Department of Physics, Mahatma College, Srinagar, to propose the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Miss.